Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaRevelis and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link down in the description to the page, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. My name is Joshua Revelis. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down with fellow enthusiasts to talk about what's going on in the technology, business, and gaming world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Revelis. I am your host as usual. And obviously today is, Friday when you guys are listening to this episode. And I think today's episode is going to be a little bit more laid back, especially given the topic, because it's another tech advice, but I kind of want to do something a little bit different. I've been thinking about this for a while regarding the tech advice episodes that I don't want them to be as scripted, to be honest, because being honest with you guys, I write a script for a good amount of these episodes, more like bulletin points to lay out said information. Like, there's certain things I want to go over, and then there's a way I organize it and organize my transitions, and there's a lot behind it, but obviously, like I said, I like being authentic and real with y'all, so I tend to keep it more laid back and not try to info dump things on you unless if it's necessary. And I think with the tech advice, I kind of want to go in this direction where it's more of a, I would say, unless if it's a topic regarding like specific things in tech specifically, that's why it's called tech advice, that I'm going to focus a little bit on information, but I do also want to include more of a personal and emotional connection, because like I mentioned before on Wednesday, this episode is going to be over audio, so it's tech advice for audio. Now, you're probably wondering, Josh, what do you mean by audio? Because, like I said, audio specifically is a very broad term because it encompasses many things. Like I said, audio includes, say, if you do audio sound engineering, if you're a mixing engineer, if you're a musician, if you listen to music, it encompasses so many things. And what I mainly want to focus on is, I do want to focus on the idea of audio equipment. But at the same time, it's also something else, because there is an overlying theme with this episode, specifically with audio, because I did and this is just a little side story that goes into it to at least give the context for the episode, is when I was in college this past my spring semester, we were in an engineering ethics class, and we had a big paper called our social impact analysis paper, and I did mine over the impact of the iPad Pro in audio and sound engineering. And there was an overall idea inside of there that I want to take from that paper because it's very important. And I think it's something we need to take into account. This idea of, I'd say when it comes to buying equipment specifically, but before we get into it, I kind of want to talk about, I'd say, the overall basis for when it comes to talking about audio, which is it's a very subjective idea. There's no one way to look at it. When it comes to audio, there is no best option in something. There's always like personal recommendations, and then there's unless if it's just like downright doesn't work or it's like just completely inferior, then but there is no always best option in audio, because like I said, it's a very subjective topic. It's the same thing I told you guys when we did the tech advice for headphones. Like with beats, yes, to some people beats sound great, and to some, like people that are audiophiles and kind of do that stuff for a living and listen to different types of headphones and know what professional headphones sound like, then they're gonna say beats suck. And I kind of still stand by that opinion, because in my opinion, beats just don't sound that good. But when it comes to audio, like I said, it's a very subjective thing. You guys might not think beats suck. I think they suck. That doesn't mean you guys should think they suck, because that's my opinion. Like, audio is a very subjective thing because everybody's ears are different. Everybody is all created differently. Like, we are all have different features, I'd say that way. That everybody's unique in their own way. And that's kind of something we should always take into account when talking about these kind of things, because audio is subjective. It is. No matter what way you try to think about it. There is no universal standard for mixing audio and things like that. Everybody has their own unique way of doing it. That's why there's different styles of it. But what I wanted to talk about was the issue that plagues audio and sound engineering specifically, because whether you think about it or not, this actually is an overhauling theme that's kind of based in our society a little bit. And it's specifically magnified in audio and sound engineering, especially when it comes to equipment. Because if you think about it, audio and sound engineers primarily rely on the equipment they have. And that's just kind of the reality of things, is they rely heavily on their equipment. But you get the point that their equipment's the most important thing, no matter what. It always is. And as a result, if they're relying heavily on their equipment, don't you think that there might be some drawbacks to that? And clearly there is. There's obviously drawbacks. We're not going to stand here and say no, because there is. And the main drawback, which I identified in my social impact analysis paper, was audio and sound engineers, as they become more and more successful, they tend to get caught up in the process of buying more equipment and always being on the cutting edge of technology. And they focus so much time and effort on the equipment that as a result, their workflow suffers. And they end up becoming less efficient and become not as, I wouldn't say not as capable as they were before, but their goal has changed. Their focus is not on mastering the craft anymore. And I think this idea realistically is even supported more by society, is that when you look at it, society as a whole isn't really focusing on mastering anything anymore. Like, especially when it comes to, I would make an example, is almost like with the smartphone market. Nobody's staying with the same smartphone for like 2+ years is normal, what was considered the average. Like, everybody's changing phones like almost every few months, essentially, if we think about it that, like, or every year. And obviously, yes, we're backing that back a little bit just because, we've gotten to the point that equipment has gotten better. But in the audio and sound engineering field, if you think about it, a lot of the equipment's already, I'd say a lot of the universal standards in audio, even though that's kind of weird, but it's an industry standard, that, yeah, they've been around for a while now. Like, think about it. The Zoom recorders that I have, specifically, like, I have the H4n Pro, and my friend Ryan, who was on the show when we did the OnePlus episode, Ryan has the H6. Those things are about 5 to 6 years old already. Like, they're really old recorders, yet they haven't updated them all because they're industry standards in their own right. In the, I would say, amateur filmmaking, or no, it's enthusiast filmmaking is what they call it. My bad. And then you look at, like, Shure as a company, obviously, they don't just make microphones either. They make lots of things. There's many things. Shure makes headphones. Like, there's a lot of things that Shure makes, but it's because they also have a lot of experience with making that stuff. Obviously, yes, the microphone I'm using, the SM58, is considered an industry standard because it's used by many people because of how good it is in live environments. The SM7B, very popular when it comes to broadcasting and podcasting. If you look at things like Joe Rogan's show, Joe Rogan uses it. If you watch the H3H3 podcast, he uses it too. If you look at Matthew Avella's The Ground Up Show, he uses it too. And he also uses a Zoom recorder. That's because mainly he focuses on minimalist themes. I'm probably do an episode about that because I think it's kind of interesting. But you get the point that audio, I'd say when you're working with audio, the equipment is always an important thing. But I think that we've kind of, I'd say, flipped the script a little bit. Because remember, back in the day, people, I'd say, like, when music was big, I'd say, like, let's say we start with the 40s, and let's start from the 40s up. They didn't have the same amount of equipment that we have today. Like, being honest, back in the day, to have equipment that I have right now to my access, people didn't have that, and they were still making some of the most popular songs you've ever heard of. and you still listen to it today. Like, think about it. In the 40s, Glenn Miller was huge, and then they started recording all their music. And if you think about it, a lot of people still listen to the Glenn Miller Orchestra. It's still very popular music. And think about it. If we go back, say, go to the 70s. I know you guys don't, probably some people hate the 70s and 80s, but there's a lot of songs in there people like. People like ABBA. They like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Obviously, September, Fantasy. Like, all these very popular songs that people still listen to. And all these were recorded with inferior equipment that we have today. And I think that's kind of the idea that as a society, or I'd say as maybe engineers specifically, because I'm not an audio and sound engineer, but obviously I know people that are, and I've talked to them about this idea. And they can even agree with me that, yes, I think that the focus has shifted from mastering the craft to buy the new equipment. And as a result of the new equipment, the craft should be better. But the problem is that that's not how it works. And that's kind of the advice that my friend Edgar gave me when I wanted to start the show. He's like, Josh, it doesn't matter what you start with. The point is that you're learning. You have to learn how to be good with what you have. The day that you learn how to be good with the equipment that you have is the day that you can buy something else. That's when you move on, because that's showing progress. That means you're progressing. I can't tell you how to, I can tell you how to manage the show, but I can't tell you how to go about it. I can't tell you how to edit them. I can't, because like I said, there is no one way. Like, obviously there's some basic things, like you don't want background noise. And sorry about that. Side note, sorry about that in the recent episodes. Since I got back home, the whole thing with managing the studios kind of been a little bit wonky, but we're getting around that. But yeah, we'll give an update later. But you get, like, going back to the topic, that there's many things Edgar can show me how to use the software, but he couldn't show me, how to balance it, because, balancing to him is going to sound different than to me, clearly. Like, we both have our different taste and flows on how we want to do things. And, I kind of make that as obvious as I can with how I edit the episodes and how I include the music. So how does this relate to the idea of audio, like with the tech advice about audio? And I think it's kind of important, because I kind of, with Ryan specifically, and I want to use Ryan as an example, that Ryan's an incredibly gifted kid. I'm telling you that right now. Incredibly gifted. Like, if I'm being honest, I know he's probably going to hate me for this, but probably not hate me, but he's going to tell me, bro, really. I honestly have not met a kid in my life that has been as gifted when it comes to even music and the many gifts that he has. Ryan's incredibly good when it comes to cinematography, videography, photography, audio, mixing. Ryan's incredible at it. The kid's like very versatile and very good at what he does. And to me, it's interesting because Ryan, like I said, I hope that he ends up doing something, because he even told me that he still wants to do something with music when he's in college. He still wants to do engineering, but he wants to do something with music. And I told him, why don't you consider something like sound, audio engineering, maybe mixing, something like that. And he thought, and he's thinking about it. And I really hope that everything goes well for him, because like I said, he's kind of one of the kids that I'm always watching out for, because I want to make sure that he comes out well, because I know there's a lot of potential in him. And I saw that easily. That's why he's one of my good friends. And, he gave me the opportunity to at least be a mentor to him. And, I appreciate that. But you get the point. When it comes to, it all revolves around this idea that the craft is the most important thing. The audio equipment, it's good to have good equipment. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I have a lot of good equipment. I'm not going to stand here and say, Josh, isn't that a little hypocritical? Didn't you buy a lot of equipment recently? I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, I have a total of 4 microphones. I have my Yeti, my Shure, my Samson, and then the newer one. Yeah, it's actually called Newer. It's weird, but... And then I got my Zoom recorder, I have my iPad, like, I have my Sennheiser HD280 Pros, clearly. But you get the point, is that it's not really about the equipment. And I know that sounds weird because, I bought a ton of equipment, but I got good with my equipment. I learned how to be as productive as I possibly can with it, and I learned how to master it. Like, yeah, like, my prime example is I started with the Yeti. Like, the Yeti, the $100 mic. Like, It's $100. Obviously, yes, it's a USB mic. It's not going to sound as good as a XLR, but you can still make it sound as good as an XLR because that's why a lot of people use it. And that's what's kind of funny is that people always bash it because they're like, well, it's $100 toy. You can start with XLR for like cheaper. And I'm like, yes, that is true. But a lot of people also tell you that you can be good with anything. That's kind of the point is you don't need like say $1,000 build right off or $1,000 studio filled with equipment right off the bat. Like you don't need $1,000 worth of gear to start good. You don't. Like some people, like for most people realistically, they started with a Blue Yeti. Like one of the YouTubers I watch, Mr. Mobile, he was honest with me in an email when we were talking a little bit about the show. He told me that, you know, he started with a Blue Yeti. And he still uses like I think he uses like a Nano, and same with Jaime Rivera from Pocket Now. He uses a Blue Yeti Nano. These are very popular and I'd say very big YouTubers as well. They're like over a lot of subscribers at this point. They're still using USB microphones. They're not using an XLR setup. And to me that's interesting because like I said is that it doesn't matter what you're using. And I agree because Henny, I mentioned Henny a couple times already, not in this episode, but like I'd say overall in the show's history, that Henny's talked about this issue and he was honest with me. Like he was honest with a lot of people about this issue because, yeah, he feels that in the industry we've kind of went backwards and that we've digressed into focusing on equipment rather than mastering the craft. And that's why, like, I'd say a lot of talented people are not so focused on the music anymore. They're not focused on making great quality stuff. It's not that music nowadays is bad. No, that's not the point. It's the whole process behind it is what's tedious. That's the main reason Henny went back to making music on an iPad. Well, not back to. He started making music on an iPad and shut his whole studio down. Was to make it on an iPad because he wanted to make it as simple as he possibly could to replicate how it was when he was younger, when he was in his college days, that he was just able with one piece of gear and he was able to, the ideas would come quick and he would just make the music. And that's how Henny was. And that's why he started doing that now. And, you know, and being honest, like Henny's resume is already impressive as it is. Like he's made music for Drake, Kendrick, you know, Chris Brown. Like he's done it all, really. Like he's already have Grammys under his belt, multi-platinum. Like Henny's award winning at this point. All of that music was made on an iPad. And I think it kind of even revolves around the idea of what can we do to really, I'd say, not fix it, but change things around here to make things more, I'd say, improve the methods behind it. And one of the things Henny recommended was the idea of incorporating minimalism. Because, like I said, his equipment's getting better and better as it goes by, and it's becoming more accessible to more people. Like, people like me are able to start up a podcast with, being realistically, if I just bought the Shure and the recorder and, say, the cable and my headphones right off the bat, I would have spent $350 at least. Let's say highball, everything's brand new. Like, well, probably a little bit more because the recorder brand new is like 200 something. And the headphones 100, so 100, and then say 220-ish. Like, about like $400, I would have started perfectly fine with the podcast. And I would have been good with that for like, until the headphones broke, pretty much. Because the Shure's not breaking any time on me, and the recorder's not breaking any time on me. But you get the point, is that it's accessible. People are able to jump into the game a lot easier than they were back in the day. Because obviously back in the day, people, when they thought of entertainment, they weren't thinking of YouTube. They weren't thinking of Spotify. They weren't thinking of like things like this. Podcasting was not huge. It was just radio talk shows. It was radio talk shows, and that's pretty much it. But you get the point, is you don't need a ton of equipment to do the job. You have to be good with your equipment. You master your equipment and you master your craft, and everything will go well. And I think that's kind of the main reason I kind of wanted to do this tech advice over audio, is because, like I said, is I'm not an audio engineer. Like, I'm pretty much just like y'all. I'm just a dude that literally got a bunch of equipment. Well, not a bunch, but at least like a handful of equipment, and learned how to be good with it. And I think maybe, yes, it was a little bit easier for me because, yeah, I was a band kid. I was a musician. Like, I understood how to balance, and I know how to make everything, not everything right. Because obviously, like, I'm not going to say I'd say in terms of player, I'm probably like a mid-card player at best. I'm not going to be the headliner anytime soon. I was just good at playing my instrument. When you asked me to do something, I was able to do it. And that's kind of the whole idea behind it, is that you don't need a ton of equipment. Like, if you think about it, a lot of my equipment's very small, so I'm able to be portable and mobile. That's kind of the main reason why I bought the recorder too, is because when I go to college, I want to leave my audio box here, because I'm like, well, I want to leave the audio box for the studio and leave that there so that I can just take my recorder, take my Shure, and take my stand, just go into a room, and then let's start. That's all I do. And I'm barely carrying less than 10 pounds. So why wouldn't I do that? It's just a quick and easy setup, and I'm able to record and still get high quality episodes. But you get the point, is that the equipment is becoming much smaller, but it still has everything you need. And it's the same thing why I wrote the paper on the iPad, because the iPad, in my opinion, I still think that the iPad could revolutionize the audio and sound engineering field. Some people might call me crazy for even stating that, but people like Henny have agreed that yes, based on how well Apple is kind of supporting the thing. I wouldn't say kind of, but they're putting a lot of good apps on there. And there's a lot of stuff that they're putting in there. If Apple really wanted to, if they wanted to transition people into being creative, which I've always told people, in my opinion, one thing that iOS does right and Apple does right when they promote their products is they focus on the creative people. They focus obviously on the general public, clearly, but they're focusing on the creators is what they're focusing on. They're focusing on the artists. They're focusing on the record producers. They're focusing on musicians. They're focusing on these people because they know there's an untapped market there, and they're giving them so much power for what they're spending. And like I mentioned Matthew Davella with his show, The Ground Up. Matthew, yes, obviously he's way bigger. He's already close to 1 million subscribers. His podcast has been around for a while now. He's already hundreds of episodes plus in, and he's had a lot of guests. And Matthew talks about the idea of minimalism a lot. And when you look at Matthew's setup, it supports it. Matthew has his MacBook to look at his notes. He has his Zoom recorder. He has 2 Shure SM7Bs, one for him and one for his guests. Has his little stands for them. Has a little round table. Has his cup of coffee. And obviously the cameras to record it because he incorporates video. But it's a very minimalist setup. It's not huge. It's not like Joe Rogan. When you look at Joe Rogan's setup, if you watch his podcast, you see how Joe has like huge boom arms coming out and, you know, big table, big room, like computers. Like, you get what I'm saying, is there's a contrast in styles. But obviously, yeah, Joe's been doing this for a long while too. Joe's already at 1,000+ episodes. I don't even know what episodes Joe's at right now, but he's incredibly popular, huge podcast host. A lot of people know who Joe Rogan is, pretty much. But you get the point, is that Matthew learned how to be good with his equipment, and that's why he lives a minimalist lifestyle. If you follow his lifestyle, Matthew's very minimalist. He doesn't focus on having everything. He's very minimalist, like very well organized and very efficient at what he does. And I applaud him for that. Like, he's doing better than most people in terms of efficiency. He's very efficient. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with this episode, was the idea that we need to stop focusing so much on the equipment. The equipment is always going to be there. Yes, I get that equipment improves over time, but we already have so much standards in the industry already that you can be good with anything. And that's kind of what some people keep forgetting, is that you don't, like, I even told people, like, they asked me, hey Josh, like, when you become, say you get to like episode 100 and you start like over your 100th episode and things like that, are you going to eventually get a Shure SM7B? And I'm like, no, not really. I don't see the need to. Like, I'm not going to drop $400 on a microphone that I personally don't need. Like, I'm perfectly happy with my Shure. My Shure can last for a long time because it's pretty much brand new. The guy only used it once and that's it. That essentially it's all brand new. Like, I don't need to buy new equipment anytime soon, and foreseeably, hopefully for the next few years. But by then, you know, if I'm blessed enough and I keep doing all this, and yeah, like, the show will hopefully get bigger and bigger and bigger, and, you know, it'll be great. but it takes time and process. It takes time and it's a process. But I'm mastering the equipment that I have right now to learn how to be good with them, learn their weak points, how do I adjust for them, and be good with what I have in front of me. Because once I'm good with what I have in front of me, then yes, I could consider new equipment, or I keep doing what I'm doing. But that's kind of the advice that I want to leave you guys with. Because like I said, I know a lot of you guys are probably like, it's going to be a boring episode. But really, it's very important. Because if you think about it, it kind of applies to life in general. Like, whether you think about it or not, it's the same thing applies to smartphones. Is you don't need to buy a new smartphone every year, guys. Our phones have gone to the point that they're so good, you don't need to upgrade every year. There's no point. It's pretty much useless. TVs have gone to the point that they're brand new. Like, if you bought a 4K TV in 2018, there's no reason to buy a 2019 4K TV. There's no point. It's exactly the same. There's no point. Like, the same thing applies. Obviously, yes, with PCs. Well, even then, PCs, you can just change out the parts. But you get what I'm saying is you don't need to. Like, my PC, 2018, I'm not swapping anything, and I'm not selling this thing until like 2020. By then, it will already be good, and then you get what I'm saying. This thing will be good for a long while. But if you really think about it, yeah, this idea applies to many things in life. And I hope you guys think about it a lot more, and that this gets you thinking a lot more, because that's kind of what I want. What I want to do with the tech advice is I want to make you guys think a little bit more, is think about it. That's basically what I want you guys to do. So I know a lot of you guys don't like people saying that, is use your brains more. That's basically what I want to do with these episodes going forward. But I thank you guys for coming back to listening to the show. I really appreciate it. I love you guys to death, because the show is growing at an incredible rate so far. We're doing really well. I really thank you guys so much. Like I said, we've already hit 25 episodes. Like, that's halfway to 50, and then oh boy, and then after, when we hit 50, it's only a grind until we get to episode 100, and that would be crazy. I thank you guys so much. I love my Patreon backers too, even though there's only one of you guys. My backer, I love you to death. Thank you so much for supporting the show. To be honest, this, like I keep saying, is this entire journey has been a blessing. Like I said, we've only done this show for like about a few months now. If you think about it, we started in January, and we're already March, April, May, 4 months in, and we're about to hit 5 months soon. So almost 5 months in, and then, it'll be crazy. In my opinion, this journey is going to be incredible. I thank you guys for joining me on it, and I hope you guys keep coming back and listening, because like I said, next week we already have an episode lined up for Tuesday, and I don't want you guys to miss that one, because it's really a special episode. It's over something a lot of people would ask me about, but I haven't done it because I wanted to wait a little bit, and we are getting to it. But I thank you guys so much for coming back to listening to the show. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Thank you guys for your time. I love you guys to death. You guys have yourselves a wonderful weekend, and take care of yourselves. Don't be dumb. Please don't do anything stupid. And I love you guys to death. Bye, guys.